Welcome to this week's live stream. I am sorry I'm late. I should have worn my sorry I'm late shirt, but I thought I was on time until I started tweaking the lighting and I was like, hey, it doesn't look right, which took another 7 minutes to fix it. Oh, the beauty of a one-man show. There's just so many things to keep track of and to, and I can't just like leave it set up and walk away like a studio and then come back in and everything's great. No, I break it all down, put it all away, then I pull it all back out again, go through the normal routine, and always find one thing isn't quite right. So hopefully today we'll have good audio, today we'll have good video. Our live streams are every Saturday. They usually start at 2:08 p.m. Central Time. And I see some of you guys already coming in here. Hi, everyone. Today's topic specifically is going to be ICP testing because the video I shared earlier this week on Reef Diary, while it was a long video, I only focused on one element. There's so much more information, and I thought let's kind of dive into that one a little bit deeper and kind of give you more insight about why this is something worth your consideration. Definitely was for me. And what's funny is that more and more posts that I'm reading online are, somebody says, oh, I've got this problem, my fish are dying, my this, my that. Everyone always says, did you send in an ICP test? I mean, I see that as an automatic staple post, but I don't know if people are doing that as much as they're telling other people to do it. And for my situation, I didn't do an ICP test because I was thinking that I just changed so much water, there's no way the water's bad. I mean, I literally believe that. I had not even an inkling that there'd be a problem. I thought it was kind of a waste of time and money, and I was like, fine, I'll do it. And then for it to come back and tell me that I'm severely deficient in several elements, specifically potassium is the big giant marker that I have been dwelling upon for the last few days. And I've been reading lots of comments, even though I have friends that say never read the comments. I still do it. I don't know, glutton for punishment, looking to argue, or just to kind of reaffirm what I try to explain. And something I always have to keep in mind, because YouTube tells me this about you, you don't all watch the whole video. Some of you do, some of you do not. Some of you watch a piece, some of you just look at the title and just make an assumption. That just is how YouTube works. And the reason I know this, how do I really know this? Well, it talks about average viewing times, first of all. So if I upload a video that's 7 minutes long and it says the average view time is 1.5 minutes, that tells me a lot of people did not watch a 7-minute video. That's okay. That's, every single person is going to choose how they want to do things. I also know that some people will say specific things or ask specific questions about things I actually talked about in the video, which for some reason they didn't hear. Maybe their dog was barking, maybe their kid was screaming at them, maybe they walked out of the room to use the restroom and left the thing playing. I don't know. But regardless, it was discussed, it was explained, it was covered, and yet they asked that question. So, like I said, I mean, and I'm sure there are going to be some people that are going to analyze every word that comes out of my lips and says, see, you stated this categorically incorrectly, which, that can happen too. I try to make sure I say the right thing. Sometimes I will go through the editor and I'll see like one word that I really meant to say different, and I'm like, it's just not worth the trouble to redo that one piece. But anyway, so why don't we just go ahead and look at the ICP results. Let me get my notes here on the top of my screen. I have a lot of things on this screen right now. Oh, okay, so let me just start off before we get to the results. Let's just kind of go into the process. So first of all, if you want to learn more about ICP testing, there are some options. And I will try to remember to put some links in this video's description later. But Coral Magazine is the first one I want to recommend. This one was from May, June of 2020, and it not only goes into different people's experiences using ICP testing, it also has something called the second word, or the second opinion, where Dr. Tim Hovanek discusses it, and he actually feels like it's still not good enough. It's not providing everything that we really need as hobbyists. However, the people that were quoted and why it helped them were very good stories. I mean, they were anecdotal, I guess you could say, because they were like, I have this problem and I sent in my test, but I guess it's more than anecdotal because they found the source of the problem because the test gave them a hint. So they could kind of like dial in on it, a little detective work, right? So I would suggest, first of all, reading it. If you're a Coral Magazine digital subscriber, you can just jump back a year and go find those articles and read them on your screen, your tablet. If you need a printed copy, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure Coral Magazine would be happy to sell you one issue and send it to you. But like I said, if you just subscribe to the magazine, you can find the electronic versions of pretty much all the copies of articles they've done over the years, and read whatever you need and do the homework. The next question is, what do you want to buy? You know, which kit is the good kit, and how much does it cost? That kind of thing. So there are different brands on the market. I have been leaning into one called ICPanalysis.com, and it is this kit right here. The kit itself, this is one I opened, so I'm going to open it again, even though it's going to be missing something because I mailed mine in. So inside the kit, you will have a Ziploc bag, and you'll have 2 vials, so you can send in 2 water samples, and one could be a sample of your tank, and the other could be a sample of your RODI water, for example. The other choice would be to put in a sample of your tank and a sample of your salt water. You know, I mean, or you could do 2 tanks, or you could do 2 salt waters, or you could do 2 RODIs. You can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of it. There's 2 in the box. These are $30, and they have the address already on the back. Now, the one thing that a lot of people didn't realize about this little tiny itty bitty box, it says postage required. And that postage required makes people think of a stamp. And so you put your 1 stamp on there, or 2, because you're like, it's a little heavy. And then it comes back to you about 4 days later, and you're like, what? Because it was insufficient postage. So I've been telling people forever, you need to put $4 on these to mail them in. And if you do that, it will get to the destination and you'll get your results. However, now the boxes with a red print on the top say free shipping. So they've actually included inside a shipping label, so you don't even have to pay extra. How nice is that? You just got to wrap this bad boy around the box and send it in, and it doesn't cost you anything additional. So literally it's $30, which is pretty cool. Now, another ICP test that is very popular, it's been around for some time now, before this one even came out, was Triton. And Triton came out with the ICP OES, which is, I believe, now being tested both in Germany as well as in the US. I think they have a machine here in the US which speeds up wait time. Fauna Marin, for example, has an ICP test there, and the Triton, I believe, is $45 a test. The one from Fauna Marin right now is on sale, and I believe it's $20 a test. But you have to ship it to Germany and wait for the results, so you've got some lag there, which could be frustrating. There are other ones out there too. These are just a few that are on top of my head. I didn't try to come up with the entire list of them all. Now, what is ICP testing exactly? Well, guess what? There's a video out there that's about 2.5 minutes long that I watched, and I'll try, again, I will try to remember to put this in the notes. I should write this down. Hang on, let me make myself a little note. Link. And I said, I've already forgot what I was talking about. Oh, ICP video link. Okay, got it. I want to make sure I have this for later, so I do stick this on here. The video showed that what happens is the water sample you send in, they will, I mean, it was very simplified for the dumb people like me. So it just sprays it in like a fine mist. And the graphic showed like larger water droplets would just fall out of suspension, but the mist, the lightest particles of your water sample would go up into the testing area. And there's, I hope I'm not saying this wrong. You know, it doesn't even matter. You're going to see the video and you'll learn it exactly what they say, so it doesn't matter what I say. But the basic premise I got from it was, as the mist goes into the testing area, it's being blasted with light. You know, I always thought it was heat. Maybe it's heat and light. I don't know. It could be both. But the thing is that as it's cooked and as the light shines through it, it gets different Kelvin ratings, and they track all the results. It kind of reminded me of the why is it when I'm on camera I can't think of anything? There's a cover album where light is shooting through a prism and it makes like a rainbow effect. I'm thinking AC/DC or Van Halen or somebody. But I think it's like that. It's sort of like a rainbow of colors is hitting the sensors, and the computer is analyzing all that data, and then it can tell you how much you have of all these different elements. Now, some of them we will never care about. I mean, we do a little, but we really don't. We just kind of want them to be right. We're not actively looking for tungsten, for example, and we're definitely not dosing tungsten. But when we add essential elements, it may include tungsten in that bottle, but how much of that bottle is tungsten? You know, so see what I'm saying? I mean, it's a very, very minor trace element. But we want to know about the bigger ones, the more important ones, of course. So normally what we all do is we send it in and we want to see things like calcium, magnesium. We really want alkalinity, and you don't get that from ICP. We might want salinity, but that's also not done with ICP. They just measure it with something like we use, like a refractometer or a digital refractometer, unfortunately. I really was hoping they'd have a machine that says, this is your seawater. We want to know if there's too much iron or if there's too much aluminum or something like that. Something that's leaking or melting or dripping into our system, causing chaos. And so that analysis can show you the results. And normally, well, I mean, I've been using one brand most exclusively. I mean, yes, I've used 2 or 3, but the one I keep looking at is ICP analysis. And normally, there's a graph with like, whatever that is, they say 40 plus, so I don't know if it's 40 squares. It feels like there's, well, let me just count them. I'm looking here at it. It is, got to move your chat out of the way. Pink Floyd, thank you guys. Everyone's saying, Pink Floyd! Dark Side of the Moon. How do you not remember this? I just remember the picture, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10, 30. I see 35 elements on this, and you're going to see it in a moment. So they say 40 plus elements are tested. I see 35 on the results. So that is going to be a lot more information than we normally get with just our regular test kits at home. Now, back to my list of what I'm trying to say. How often would you even consider doing this? You could do it quarterly. I just heard from, or actually I think I read it in the article, that ICP analysis actually recommends you do it every single week for 4 weeks in a row so you can kind of establish a baseline. Triton does it a little differently in that you send in your sample, they compile all the results, you go to the file itself, which is on a website, and I think it's a PDF also you can download, but usually it's a little bit more interactive. And as you look at the various things, then it'll say our recommendations on Triton's website, and you can look there and it will say you need to add this much of this product, which is like ABCD, for this many days in a row. And then after you've accomplished this task, in theory, you would relatively soonly send in another sample to verify that those numbers are now where they need to be. And the principle behind Triton is to not do water changes, but to do these tests on a regular basis. I'm going to assume minimum 4 times a year, probably every other month, possibly every month, but you're dialing in your doses of these different elements to where you have this picture-perfect water all the time. I think that's the principle behind it. And then Triton, about 2 years ago at Macna, revealed that they had a new test kit that was ICP NDOC, and it was to actually measure nitrate and the nutrients in the system. That one takes longer to get because I did that one as well. And I sent mine in, I sent in my OES test, and I got my results really quickly, and I had to wait like a solid week longer to get the NDOC results. Now I'm going to mention, because you're like, oh, well, I want that for sure. I just heard through a friend that there's something going on right now with NDOC results, and you have like a 2-month wait. So I don't know what's happening. I don't know any details, but I do know if you're going to go that route, you want to touch base with them and find out from them what they expect, like why things are delayed or when it'll happen. I have no idea if it's international shipping, or if there's a machine down, if it's COVID. I have no idea. But you just want to make sure you know, so you're not getting upset that you send something off and you're not going to get an answer for so long that it's pointless. Okay. The costs incurred of doing this, I would say, are not to be ignored. Like I said, if you send in this one for $30 each time, you're getting 2 results, which is kind of nice. But it's $30, and you can buy your own test kit for less than that usually, of the normal elements we test for, and you can test every single week for a year, where this is going to be a one-time deal. So you have to kind of weigh this out and decide what you think is best for you. Now, the wait time varies. Obviously, if it's being measured here in the US, you're going to get a little bit quicker results. And the best part is you're not waiting for something to be mailed back to you. You were literally getting your information shipped to you via email instantaneously the moment they're done, which is, I love that. And this week in one of my diaries, I mentioned how I took my stuff. I contacted them in advance and I said, look, I just got my results in. I want to send in more samples. I want to double check some stuff, and I need to test some other things as well to prove a theory that I think I have going on in my head. Can I do this overnight? Because your address says on the box, well, this, of course I would lie. This one has a street address. The other box I picked up specifically said P.O. Box. And I said, I don't want to ship an overnight package to a P.O. Box. And they actually called me back. I missed their call. They left me a voicemail. And they just said, if you're going to use that company, ICPanalysis.com, to ship overnight, you want to use FedEx, not the post office. Because, post office does overnight shipping too, but apparently they're having problems receiving their packages. So if you're going to pay for overnight, you might as well get it to its destination. They recommended FedEx. So that's what I did. I boxed everything up, sent it to FedEx, and dropped it off. And then the next morning when I woke up, I ran to my computer just to see the tracking number, just to see if it made it there, because FedEx has also been a little bit laggy when it comes to overnight shipping, as I noticed, a couple of months ago, shipping corals. So I saw it was delivered. I sent them an email, and I just said to them, the person I was speaking with, her name was Anna. So I said, Anna, according to FedEx, you have my box. So please work your magic. And then I put XOXO or something like that. And I just hoped. And all afternoon I kept checking and checking and checking. It's funny, I don't really like to look at my email very much. I mean, to be honest, I don't. I get a lot of them. And that day I just every hour went over there and hit get new mail. And there was nothing. I was like, nothing, come on. And I was like, this is not waiting for you. Hurry up. And finally it was God, I think it was 7:15 that night. I got 8 emails from them saying, your samples are in. I don't even know why I got 8 emails, because it was 4 samples, but I got all these results. So why don't we take a look at some of those so you can kind of see with your own eyes and kind of see how it works on the website. I also know that ICP Analysis has an app on their phone where you can look at the results on your phone as well. And it may be more interactive. I don't know. I didn't really play with it much. I did download it to kind of just look at it, but I was like, all right, it's a vertical screen. I like a desktop. I like to see everything on my screen at once. So let's do this. Let me switch to, there we go. And can I make this bigger? Oh, I can. Look at that. All right, so I'm not gonna make it too big. And now I gotta scooch this over so I can see what you're seeing. How about over here? And I will just for a moment hide the chat box to the side because I'm talking rather than reading your comments. So here is, I don't want to move this too much. I just got to move these other things out of my way. On the left column, you have your list of aquariums, and you can have as many as you want in there. You can have your RODI systems. You could even test drinking water if you were so inclined. So here under aquariums, I have a few different entries. I have the artificial seawater polytank, which holds 250 gallons, and that would be tests for that system of water. Beneath it is the frag tank. Beneath that is the 400-gallon mixed reef. And then this was a water sample I sent in when I went diving in Bon Air, and I wanted to just see what the water was like for those corals, and I was curious. So I brought home a sample and sent it in. Now, when you pick something like, for example, the reef, you're going to have different dates of when you've done your tests, and you're also going to have your information here on the right column based on what you pick, such as comparing your water to Florida, or you could compare it to Hawaii, Fiji, St. Thomas, or you can just go to the ICP suggested reef tank parameter. So if we go here, we're in the 400-gallon mixed test, and this is a test. You can see there's a white bar that's telling you we're working on this one. This is from 2/21/2019, and at that time, my calcium was measuring 377. On this date, it measured 388. On this date, it measured 420, which is on 4/8/2021. This one here was a week ago on 8/16, and it measured 398.81. And then a week later with the overnight shipping, that one came out to 407. So you can kind of see how your calcium's been doing over time and compare it to what they recommend, which they're suggesting 400. And you're just kind of seeing the trend. We can do the exact same thing. We're still in the same tank. We're looking at all the samples for the last 5 tests. And we can see my magnesium on the latest test was 1259, 1260. The week before was 1250. I'd been dosing magnesium, so it makes sense that it went up slightly. And then in the past, my magnesium was 1374. It was 1397. It was 1355 or 54. And then they recommend 1400, which is actually the number I like. I like 1400 as well. Then let's take a look at potassium, even though you guys heard it all this week. And you can just look at the picture and you can see how I've had different numbers, but it's really come down. So they recommend 380. And I'm going to get into more about this in the potassium section. I'm just kind of touching on this right now in the ICP section. They recommend 380, and back on 2/21 of 2019, mine was 340. And I'm looking at the numbers right here, by the way, if you're wondering. You don't have to actually have it on the box to look at the number, but you can look right here inside the grid itself. Whatever the blue one is you picked, this would be another one. So you're back to potassium. All right, so February of 2019, it was 340, which was kind of low. Then in, what is that, August of 2019, I had it up to 377, almost 380, which is good. Then this year, in April of 2021, it was 375. And then a week ago, it was 199, and it tells you, alert, there's an element that is too low and way below what they recommend. And then the overnight shipping I did was 203. So it was a difference of 199 to 203. It's basically the same number. I just knew I had a major problem on my hands with potassium. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it at all. Matter of fact, if we just take a look at, I'm going to click this one again. This is the 1 week ago test. And just looking at the grid underneath, you can see all the yellow squares. Cobalt was measured too low. Iron was too low. Iodine was too low. Manganese was too low. Zinc was too low. Everything else is white. White means they're all within range. You don't have to worry about any of them. You don't have to even think about them. All you care about is there a red box, which means it's too high, or is there a yellow box that it's too low? All right? And then when I did my water test for the overnight shipping, and this was, again, the 400-gallon reef from this week, actually, from the 24th, and today is the 28th, so it's 4 days later we're talking about this, which is great because I was able to do the overnight shipping. The follow-up, let's just put this back on calcium, for example. So if we look at this chart from this week's water sample, potassium was 203, it was too low. Cobalt was too low. Iron was too low. Manganese was too low. Zinc was too low. But you know what? Iodine wasn't too low anymore. See over here? It was too low. Why was there a difference between this test and this one? Because I dosed Prodibio right between these two tests. I sent in my water sample, got my result back, and I was like, all right, it's time to do Prodibio anyway. And I put it in because I put in my Prodibio in on the 20th. So here I sent in the sample on the 16th. I probably didn't even have the results yet, but I knew it was time. And I put in IOD plus, which is their iodine, and it raised it up slightly from 19.94 ppb and brought it up to, I guess, 0. But it wasn't parts per billion anymore. It was probably in the ppm range again, where it belongs. So that was an interesting little aside, just to actually see something change from a slight change of, one thing I dosed. And then, you can look at other things. And a lot of this, I mean, to be honest, some of this stuff is actually over my head. I've asked people, I've joked about things in the past, like, look how much chlorine I have. But it's not chlorine like we're thinking for cleaning a swimming pool. It has to do with, I think, sodium chloride. And so you've got these massive numbers here. But again, you're looking at the trends, and you can see that things are pretty much where they need to be for the most part. Again, they're not red, so there's nothing to be worried about. So you can actually play around with this kind of stuff. All right, so that was the reef. Now, the frag tank, I don't test very often when it comes to ICP testing, and so you'll only see 3 results here, or 2, actually. You've got the exemplar from over here, and we'll go back to ICP suggested. And then this was from February of 2019, and these are the results, and you could see that everything was low. Potassium was low, strontium was low, cobalt, iron, iodine, manganese, vanadium, zinc. Everything was terrible, but nothing was high. Nothing was toxic. There wasn't like a massive amount of arsenic in there or something like that. And then when I sent in the sample this week, I was low on calcium a lot, 321. Magnesium was down at 1124. Potassium was less than 200 again, where remember they recommend 400 for potassium. Look, there's the chart. I mean, look, my potassium back in February of 2019 was 308, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And then here we are this week, and it's down at 194, less than 200. 50% not enough, which explains why some of the corals that were hanging in there started deteriorating after the water change. And then, I mean, so, and the thing is, I had actually done some big water changes on that frag tank, so things should have been back on track, but the water changes did not correct things and make it better. Now, the artificial seawater poly tank, we'll do that one. I've only tested it a couple times as well, and we'll go back here to suggested reef tank, and we can look at calcium. From February of 2019 was at 366, and this time it was 368, so it was about the same. Magnesium back then was 929, which wasn't enough. And then, I'm sorry, did I get that right? 1200. And then this week it was at 929. I'm not surprised that some of these numbers are off, okay? Just so you know. It is the frag system. I don't take care of it nearly as well as I do the reef. And then my potassium level back in February of 2019, I think we already discussed this before, was at 349, 350. So they recommend 380. It wasn't that low. But in this case, this week, it was measuring 117. Crazy low. Is there anything we care about in here? How about lanthanum? We always talk about lanthanum because I use it to get rid of phosphate. So my lanthanum level, they recommend 0.101 ppm. And it was 0.007 ppm back in February 2019. And it was 0.36 parts per billion, not parts per million. So it's actually quite low. Add 3 more zeros, I believe, to get that number where it really is. So it's actually very low. So while it might look like a big thing on the graph, it's actually quite low. All right, so we did that. And then here is the brand new batch of Aquavita salt that I sent in that I opened this week and overnight shipped. And as you can see, these are all the results for the entire batch. I mean, there's the one sample. This is it. And this is a brand new batch of salt. I mixed up a gallon. And by the way, one person had made a comment that when you're trying to do a test with Red Sea salt, they recommend you mix 2.5 gallons of salt for the test. And I have no problem with making 2.5 or 5 gallons. I just grabbed a gallon because I thought it's easy. I can mix a gallon, I can do my thing, and I can move on with my life. And I did the same thing with the old salt as well as the new salt when I did my comparison because of the theory that was brewing in my head that there was a real problem. So I mixed up a gallon, and that's why on this test right here, this one that we were looking at, the artificial seawater in the poly tank, I didn't actually send a sample from the poly tank because that water was probably 4 weeks old mixing in that bin. So it's been going for a while, and I thought, well, somebody might say it precipitated out. That's why, you know, because you weren't using it in your reef. And so I thought, well, I don't want to take a chance that I'm providing misleading information. Let me take a brand new scoop of salt, which was about half a cup, and put it in a gallon of water, mix it up, wait 5 minutes, make sure it's clear, take my sample and mail it in, and I got these results. But when I took the brand new salt and did the exact same thing, gallon of water, half a cup of salt, mixed it up, made sure it was 1.026, it came back and everything was perfect. Vanadium was off slightly. They'd like it to be 0.01 ppm, and this was 0.068 parts per billion. So vanadium could be higher. All right, so that is how you go through and look at everything. And then, by the way, I also did send an RODI sample. And so here was I haven't tested it once apparently. I think I did with another brand in the past, but I sent this one in this week when I did the overnight shipping. No, that's not right. Where is it? Could it be here? Nope, it's not there. Well, it said, oh yeah, that's right. That's correct. I didn't do the overnight shipping. This is the one where I sent in the reef and one sample of RODI and waited a week for the results. So on 8/16, that is correct. These are my results coming back from the RODI system, and you tell them it's RODI. I believe if you didn't tell them it's RODI and they just assumed it was a saltwater sample, you might get some wonky results. They probably have to adjust the machine specifically because they ask you to tell them that it's RODI. So we're not trying to trick them. We're not trying to outwit them. We're trying to get answers. And if I went to the fish store and said, hey, can you test my water and tell me what you get? That's super vague. But if I said, hey, could you test my water and tell me what my nitrates are? They'll say, yeah, absolutely. And they will tell you exactly what you need to hear, the nitrate reading. So I would not try to throw things in to throw them off or to test them. If you have serious doubts, take 3 or 4 samples of the same water, put them in 3 or 4 packages, still label them the same thing you want, you know, their 400-gallon reef tank, and mail it in and see if all 4 match each other. That could be one way to eliminate a false reading, because odds are you're not going to get 4 identical samples to give you 4 different crazy readings. That would be rather insane. Okay, so that is really what I want to talk about when it came to ICP testing. And by the way, if you guys have questions and you want to ask in the live chat right now, do @Mila's Reef so I can find your questions and I'll address them here in a little bit. But now we're going to jump to the next part of this topic, and that is going to be potassium. So I've had a few people comment on the, like I said, I've been reading the comments, and I've had a few people say, it's not the potassium, it's not your salt mix. You know, just like, what's going on in my tank is not because I killed cyano or because I did a big water change. And one more thing I want to address really quickly here, which I'm sure won't get to the right person, but they made a comment yesterday about adding the cleanup crew, and they said, you're still doing things too fast. So let me set the record straight here for a second. Here's a thing you don't know about me. If I was not doing a reef diary every single day, I'd still be doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm literally telling you what I'm doing, and I'm doing it the way I've always done it. I have always addressed what's going on with my tank and handled it and tried to figure out what's wrong, correct it, and move forward so that you guys have a nice tank to look at. That's what I do. So you're just living through it day by day, one piece at a time. In the last 37 reef diaries, I have shared with you, what was it? Basically 3 hours of video covering those 37 days. I've been basically averaging about 5 minutes per video to tell you what happened day by day by day. But I would do this anyway. Whether there was a camera here or not, I would be doing literally those things I did, and then maybe I'd recap you on Saturday if I happen to remember all those little details. But I don't remember them all. I remember the big ones. So in the case of this, I am doing what's normal. My tank needed a cleanup crew. My tank has gone to crap. Corals are dying, phosphates trying to rise, nitrates floating around, alkaline's doing the dance, and I'm starting to see things growing on the rock, and I need a cleanup crew, and I need it now, and I haven't had one in a while, and adding new creatures to clean the rock is not moving too fast at all. I'm sorry, I totally disagree with you on that one. But several people were warning me about potassium. Others were like, oh my God, get some potassium in there. I chose, because I thought about it. I mean, I don't just willy-nilly do things. I don't, you know, for example, I'm pretty picky when it comes to food and drinks. So if you think I'm just like grabbing things and clutching at things to make quick decisions, I'm not. I owned this bottle for 2 years. I've thought about dosing a little tiny bit for a while to raise my magnesium, my potassium from 360 to 380, but I never really felt comfortable with testing it, so I didn't do it. So it's been sitting here getting dusty. The moment I said I was going to dose this, I had a couple of people immediately warn me your alkalinity will spike. I thought, huh, that's interesting. But I didn't do anything about it. I just was like, okay, check. And I put it into the, well, I actually used this Camor dosing pump. This is the X1, the first one. I think it's called X1 Pro. And it's this little guy right here. Probably says X1 Pro in that box somewhere. And this is a $60 dosing pump. Super easy. You tie it into your phone. You use Bluetooth to communicate with it so your phone has to be near it. You program it and you turn it on. So I programmed this to dose half the bottle. This is the 1,000 milliliters. I wanted to put in 500 a day. I wanted to, because, why would I pick that much? Mathematically, they tell you to raise your potassium no more than 50 ppm per day. And my tank was crazy low. Like I said, it was 200. I needed to get to 380. But I thought, well, if I put in 500 milliliters today, that will raise it to 250. And then if I put in another 500 milliliters the next night, that will get me to 300. It's still too low, but it's better than 200. And I didn't want to take a week to bring it up because I got corals that look like crap, as you guys saw in one of the reef diaries where I did a close-up and I showed you the chalices that are hideous. And the first day of dosing, I dosed 12 times, a total of 47 milliliters. Now, how did I come up with that number? The app did it. It was so nice. It said, how much do you want to put in? I said, 500 milliliters. How many times do you want to put in? I was like, I don't know, 12. And it said, all right, if we do 12 times 47, you're going to get your 500. I was like, done, save, upload. And that's what I did. And then I set it up with a tube going into this bottle, and I had it trickling into the reef directly in an area where there's a ton of flow, so it would mix into the reef. I didn't want to dose it into the sump. I want to put it up high, get it in the water. Hopefully the corals get a nice big sip of potassium and they can move on with their lives. Then, because the tubing I had didn't reach to the bottom of the bottle last night, or for day 2, it ran again and dosed more, but it didn't finish the bottom. I think there was about 200 milliliters left. So really, I dosed this over 3 different nights, not 2 nights, because day 3, I had to put it inside this glass. I like this little beaker. Caitlin made me buy it a while back. She wanted it for the kitchen for making pancake mix. I was like, oh, this is perfect. It even has demarcations on the side. So I was able to put the last of this in there. I put a shim under it to tilt it slightly, and it sucked it bone dry. It was fantastic. There wasn't one drop of potassium in there this morning when I got up. It's all in the reef. Now, I could do a measurement. I've got this one test kit that's old that I opened up brand new, but I opened an expired kit, so it's not very accurate. And I've ordered a new kit in the meantime. And I've been told Salifert is the potassium test kit to get. Several people have said that. Completely unrelated human beings are like, oh, make sure you use Salifert. I'm like, oh, okay. So I got to find one of those, track it down, and order that. But in the meantime, one's coming from Fauna Marin to replace my expired one, which, by the way, has a lot of steps and seems like really hard. Why is there a pile of dosing pumps here? I just want to mention these are the 3 I sell. This one is $60 and it works with Bluetooth. This one is $90 and it works with Wi-Fi. And this one is $150. It's a continuous dosing pump. Like, it's not one you're going to trickle on and off from time to time. You literally are setting it on to run. For example, if you had 1 or 2, well, I guess if you had 2 of them and you had it programmed appropriately, it could do automatic water changes. For me, I could run one of these to keep my calcium reactor fed all the time. And just because I want water flowing through the calcium reactor 24 hours a day. And so this is a continuous duty pump for $150. It works with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, Wi-Fi for sure, because I played with the app for about 20 minutes while I was playing, when I tried out the very first one. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you about that. So what happened with the alkalinity when I dosed the potassium? It went up, just like that guy told me. I was like, he's right, because the Trident is measuring my water every 6 hours. And it showed the alkalinity was creeping up. You know, here I've kept it around about 9.1 steadily for a good week. I'm proud of myself. And then I does the potassium, and it's like 10.68. I'm like, oh. So I immediately stopped the Versa pump, which is the dosing pump I use to continuously feed the calcium reactor, and I unplugged the CO2 tank so it doesn't add any more CO2 to the media, because I don't need to melt any, because I don't need any alkalinity while this was going in the tank. Let me see right now what my alkalinity is on the reef, because I don't think I checked it today. So yeah, it's still 10.8. It's up there. Now, another thing that went up, interestingly, is the calcium went up. Now, as far as I know, this is potassium chloride. It doesn't say. It says the ingredients are water, potassium salts, and stabilizers. This is called Elemental. And there's a whole line of Fauna Marin Elemental bottles. And I ordered a second one because I want to get my numbers up. But I know there's other ways of doing this now, obviously. But this is what I'm doing for now. I don't want to jump ahead. I want to stay on what I'm talking about. So potassium, getting the number up, had to adjust the calcium reactor because the alkalinity has crept up. And now it's there. And it doesn't matter. I'm not going to sweat alkalinity and try and fight it down or do anything weird. The coral's already been through enough. This little hiccup here for a couple of days is not going to do anything. Yesterday's heat wave that hit this house, oh my God, that was another nightmare I had to deal with. My tank runs 77.5 to 78.6 day to day. It's like a 1.1 degree swing. And yesterday when I got up, as I said in the diary, it was 79.8, so creeping up on 80. The house was 78 when I got up, and through the day it got to 85, and the tank was at 80.7, and I thought, man, this reef, it is going through hell lately. It's just unbelievable. So I got the bags of ice, and I don't know if you guys caught my joke in there. I did it for fun, but I didn't see any reactions. I made a comment when you look at the actual bags of ice in the video. There's a couple of screenshots or photographs. And it says across the bag of ice, emergency ice. And I was like, I bought the right kind. That just makes me laugh. I don't know why no one didn't see that. Anyway, the emergency ice worked out really well. I first put one bag inside a trash bag in the sump, and it didn't really phase the tank at all. It didn't make, the tank didn't get any hotter, but it wasn't coming down. And I had bought 4 bags, and so I just said, yeah, I'll put the other 3 in right now. And I immediately watched over the next, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, the tank, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I don't know, something like that. It was a hot day, and I could barely move in this house. I know this sounds like, you know, first world problems, but for a guy who is half Swiss, loves the snow, sitting in a house that's 85 and sticky was unbearable. I couldn't do anything but fret about the temperature of the tank. That was it. That's all I cared about. So here I am. I'm bringing down the temperature, and then I sit there and under a ceiling fan, just miserable, and the house is baking, in my opinion. It's, you know, I'm used to like 70, 71, and my whole house, everything in this house is 85. I'm thinking my chocolates are melting around me. I mean, it was a nightmare. I'm telling you, you wouldn't want to be here. And then, you know, I had the flat tire, or the tire that was going to go flat, and then I had my vehicle in the shop. I didn't even mention this. So my vehicle's in the shop to get the tire fixed so I'm not stranded. And the ice is melted, and the tank is rising again in temperature. And I'm like, ugh. But fortunately, Frank's Tanks contacted me because he needed something for a customer that I stock, and he sent his employee over to get it. And I said to him, could you do me a favor? And he's like, what's that? And I said, my house is 85 degrees, the AC's broken, I'm trying to cool the tank. Would you be willing to go ahead and grab 4 more bags of ice for me at 7-Eleven down the street and, you know, buy yourself a drink? And I gave him a $20 bill. And he did that. He came back 5 minutes later, and I put in 3 more bags into the tank, and the temperature came down a degree. And I was glad because it was back in the 79s. And then a little while later, this Firestone contacted me and said, your truck's ready. So I ran down there right quick and got my truck and got more ice because the AC guy was here at this point. No, I didn't get the ice yet. The AC guy was here. He's working on it, but I just knew he wasn't going to like, oh, here you go, and solve the problem. No. It was a whole ordeal. It took hours. And I told him, you know what? You just keep working on this AC. I'm going to buy more ice because the reef can't wait. And he says, nope, I totally understand. And I got 3 more bags for the reef and 1 bag for the frag tank and brought everything down a degree again. So there was kind of a roller coaster effect on my heater or my temperature graph. While, you know, here I'm worrying about corals that are too pale. I'm worried about alkalinity. It's a little too high all of a sudden. And suddenly I'm dealing with this heat that I've never had to deal with ever in my house. My house is never hot. Ever, never. Usually the problem is the house is too cold because it's winter and I can't run the heat because there's a problem, or I have to turn on emergency heat. I mean, that's summer, never have a problem. So that sucked. And I know a few people are going to comment and say, well, why don't you buy a chiller? Well, I think a chiller is going to cost me about $1,000 or $1,200. I don't really want to spend. I could use that on other things. Number 2, this is the first time in the history of running all my tanks, large tanks like the 280 and the 400, that I've ever had a tank that needed ice to cool it down. I do remember back in the day, I had a little 3-gallon Pico in the kitchen, and it would get too warm, and I'd have to float a frozen 20-ounce bottle of water in there every single day. And I think it was because the lights over that tank, it was like power compact lights or something. They were just too hot, and they were heating up the water. But no, I've never had to ice my tanks at all. So this worked out really, really well. It was a nice solution. It cost me $30 versus $1,200. And the other thing is, if I'd had a chiller, yes, the tank would have been the perfect temperature, assuming nothing was wrong, assuming the feed pump is operating right, assuming the chiller is operating right, that I haven't like neglected cleaning out the screen that protects the coils from being clogged up. Assuming everything's working perfectly, and it would have been pumping out more heat in this room, making the room hotter and hotter and hotter because it's constantly pushing the heat into the room. And on a big old chiller, it has to take up space somewhere. Where am I going to put it? So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I don't really want a chiller. I've never wanted one. I've never owned one for a reason because I've never had the need. Yesterday would have been convenient, but it would have sucked because the house probably would have been 90 degrees with that thing running all day inside this room. And this is where I live. So anyway, back to potassium. Now, I reached out to several people talking about potassium specifically. And I also found an article I want to share with you guys. Not the whole article. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs here from Randy Holmes Farley, who is our saltwater scientist that we've been relying on to help keep our parameters straight for the last 20 years easily. And under an article he wrote on Reef to Reef about, let's see, what's it called? Hang on, let me get my Optimal Parameters for Coral Reef Aquarium by Randy Holmes Farley. I don't know when he wrote it, but there's a paragraph in here, a couple paragraphs, under the recommended details of other parameters, potassium. Potassium is listed with the less critical parameters, not because it isn't important, but due to the fact that it does not get rapidly depleted in most aquaria. The majority of reef aquariums do not test for or dose potassium, and likely have adequate amounts from water changes alone. Potassium is important for the cellular function and generally is higher in concentration inside the cells than outside. In people, for example, nearly all of it is inside of cells, with very low concentrations present in the blood. In marine systems, most cells of organisms have higher concentrations of potassium in them than the surrounding seawater. That would make it seem that potassium would be depleted rapidly as organisms grow and add tissue mass, whether they are bacteria, microalgae, macroalgae, fish, or corals. However, there is quite a lot of potassium in seawater and salt mixes, and aquaria are typically being fed foods that also consist largely of cells that once contained potassium. Assuming these cells are not broken open or rinsed free of potassium, a large amount comes in with foods. So the net concentration of potassium in the tank will be balanced between the food and other inputs and the uptake from tissue mass, whether it's exported or left in the tank. A number of aquarists have found that aquaria are depleted in potassium and dose it to maintain natural levels. I've not found it depleted in my aquarium, and I do not dose any. Some people associate depletion with organic compound or organic carbon dosing to drive bacterial growth, but I've not seen that in my system, perhaps due to the foods that I choose to feed. Of those with depleted potassium, the primary symptom seems to be certain issues with SPS corals such as Montipora. Sometimes it is reported as poor growth and grayish coloration. Literally, what happened? I do not know if that really does relate to low potassium, but if you have such an issue, measuring potassium with a kit and dosing, if necessary, may be useful. I'd recommend maintaining around 380 to 420 ppm, but if it's already higher than that level, then I would not do anything to try to lower it. Okay, so that was Randy Holmes Farley. I also am friends with a guy that goes by the name Justin Credible. Yes, that's literally how it sounds, the way he's written it. Justin Credible. He is incredible. And he is a mad scientist. He is the guy that I went to visit years ago at some kind of a school. I don't know what the type was. We were visiting while they were closed. And he had this massive lab, and he taught students probably marine sciences, I assume. And you know how we use, I don't. You know how y'all use GFO to remove phosphate from your water? He would take the used GFO and he would dump it in a 10-gallon aquarium. And he'd put this 10-gallon aquarium on the edge of his refugium, and he'd add like this much water. So it's just a puddle of rusty, used, worthless GFO immersed in liquid. And then he ran airline tubing from the liquid over the rim of the tank and down into the refugium and tied a knot in it so it would just drip. And he was dripping the rusty water back into the refugium, and his plants were thriving and growing. He was basically adding iron by using the used GFO that could no longer take out phosphate. And I was like, that is insane. No one thinks of this stuff, but he does. So anyway, he wrote a little blog about potassium back in 2015 and said part 1. And I read it, and it just said, you know, I believe at this time period, hobbyists should start looking at potassium. They should be thinking about potassium. And he's like, a lot of people don't, and like myself included. And so I read it, and I wrote him a message. Said, hey, do you know where part 2 and part 3 are? That would really be useful. And he got super excited. And he said, what are you working on? Are you finally getting into it? This is fantastic. Oh, I can't wait to hear all the details. I was like, no. My reef is dying. I need to know more about potassium. So he gave me some links to some more blogs. I will put the links in the show notes here at the bottom under this video later. So I'm going to put it here, putting a note so I don't forget. Justin Credible blog links. See, if I don't give myself a note, I won't do it. All right, so one of the things that they warn you is don't overdose potassium. And that just goes without saying. I mean, we are not supposed to overdose iodine either. We're supposed to put in the right amount of everything and not make mistakes. But potassium is actually a big deal. It's and way more of a big deal than I've ever cared about in my entire life. Now suddenly I care. And you know what? So be it. I'm fine with that. I don't mind learning something new and finding out how much more beneficial it can be. I know there's certain people out there, like Andre Mueller, who I believe is out of Houston, and he has been pushing moonshiners, reef keeping, moonshiners, something. And he has all these little bottles. And it kind of reminds me of Zeovit. Zeovit had all these little blue bottles, and you know, the bottles were not cheap, and each one had something in it. And you had to follow a very specific regime. And one of my friends was doing it. And he showed me, he opened his cabinet door to his sump, and there was this little printout that looked like an Excel spreadsheet. And he had actually put in all what he had to put, 3 drops of this, 1 drop of this on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, 5 drops of this. On Thursday, shake the media. On Friday, 1 drop of this. And he made the spreadsheet, then he printed it, and he cut it out, and he put that on the door. And each day he'd open the door and see what he had to do. And I was like, I do not want to do any of that. No, I don't want, I can't stand it. And you know, each bottle was like $90. So you had to spend like $500 right there just to get these elements. Anyway, Andre kind of has a similar thing going on as far as I know. I haven't dug into it deep. I kind of read it, I went over it curiously, but I didn't retain anything. I just knew he liked potassium, and he liked witch hazel, and he liked a few other things. So, and he keeps posting pictures of fantastic, colorful corals. Well, Justin has really vivid corals as well. He could really cook up some stuff. And I started to think about the guys with these really super colorful corals are doing more than just keeping a reef tank at normal water parameters. Dan Riggle, who's been in the hobby for probably 20 years, always has these fantastic corals. He was literally mentioned in this article for the ICP testing. And in one of the blogs I read, he talked about how he doses potassium regularly to maintain his colors, and when he doesn't have enough potassium, the colors fade. So very interesting stuff that I think most of us never think about. Now, okay, let's talk about the other problem. You're new to the hobby, you're watching my tank do this, and you're thinking, oh, well, I got to get me some potassium. Slow down. We don't want to jump into the deep end of the pool when we're new, okay? When you're starting to learn to swim, just take your time, stick to the basics. But if you are established, if you've been going for a while, if your tank is doing pretty well, but you feel like there's some room for improvement, then it's good to start researching this topic of potassium, start looking into ICP testing, start finding out if you want to use the Triton method, if you want to go the moonshiners method, if you want to go with any of these things. You know, you just want to find, because just dripping things in is not necessarily a solution. And we want to make sure that we are putting in what is lacking, or we're enhancing just the right amount. And it's so easy to mess up. Matter of fact, in one of Justin's blogs I was reading, he made the comment, which again, didn't know this either. You know, Lugal's solution, I believe it's just concentrated iodine. But apparently, based on what one sentence in his blog, Lugal's solution apparently has some potassium in it. So when he was dosing Lugal's, it maintained his potassium a little bit. Now, the article I read to you from Randy Holmes Farley talked about how Montipora would turn gray. Literally what happened in my tank with every single Sunset Monty and my green Capricornus and a lot of them. And then all these chalices. They literally look cooked from the inside out. Every one of them is super pale. The skin is translucent. And I kept thinking, and that's why initially in Reef Diary 17, I said, I believe I killed the beneficial bacteria within these chalices, and that's why they look like this. But normally, as the tank stabilizes, which it did, because I didn't do anything else with it, the corals will start to grow new zooxanthellae within themselves, and with the lighting coming down into the water, they will absorb and add some pigment and some coloration. Of course, food helps too, right? So you got food, you've got nutrients from the fish waste, you've got lighting, you got flow, and those corals should get some color. But they weren't getting any color at all 3 weeks in a row. Not one hint of color. Not like, oh, it's starting to come back, or it's starting to be less translucent, or it's turning brown. It was nothing. They are just like ghosts, and they look terrible. I mean, and I had chalices that have completely changed colors from what they were. And that correlates with what Randy said in his article, where he said the potassium is inside the cells. So when the tank has so little potassium in the water, clearly that is what happened. And all the ICP testing I did correlates with what I believe is my salt mix has a massive deficiency within it. Now, several people have made comments like, well, you should mix your salt, like take a stick and do this, roll the barrel around. I don't think that's even reasonably possible, because the salt in the barrel, first of all, it's called something called anhydrous chloride, and it means it's super, super, super dry, and it's screaming for moisture, okay? And if you were to take a package of flour that you get off the, you get flour, okay? Let's just assume flour had different things in it besides flour. And you said, well, you got to mix that flour. Well, a normal person in the kitchen might pour the flour in a bowl and then stir it with a spoon, and then, I don't know, put it in some other container. Now it's mixed. In this case of the salt, I have this salt that has to remain dry. I don't want humidity to get into it. I don't want contamination to get into it. I don't want anything in it. And for me to actually put a stick into 300, 400, 500 pounds of salt and try to do this won't work. And trying to just roll the barrel, it wouldn't mix, because it's not like a dryer with clothes that are tumbling with a lot of open air. It's like rolling a brick of flour or a brick of sugar. Nothing's going to mix. Maybe some grains on the outer edges will get some shifting, but the core will be the core even as you tumble this thing all over the place. So that's not possible. When I asked someone from CChem, or I was discussing this, actually someone that watches Reef Diary contacted me and says, Mark, we got to get you in contact with some people at Aquavitro. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. I was saying I also don't feel comfortable with even like scooping the salt out and pouring it into another barrel, because with every scoop there's like a light dust that goes in the air, and I don't want to risk inhaling that stuff. I'm super cautious when I reach in already. I hold my breath, or I'm exhaling. Usually I'm like, I take a deep breath away from the barrel, I scoop up my salt, and then I breathe again with no dust. But to pour it and transfer it into another container, have all that dust go up, would be bad for me and my lungs. It's just like walking through your attic and getting all the insulation in your lungs, right? And the other problem is that as I'm scooping it, I'm letting in all the Texas humidity get into it. I'm never going to be in a room that is so devoid of humidity that I can successfully move the salt over to get a good mixture. This stuff is supposed to be mixed properly, and I'm not using 10 scoops out of a giant barrel. I'm using 90 pounds at a time. I'm using a lot of salt. One barrel does 4 water change vessels, okay? I get 1,000 gallons out of it. That's 250 per batch, and that's how I mix it. So even if there was like a little bit of sedimentation or siltation or whatever you want to call it in certain areas of the barrel, the fact that I took out 90 pounds or a quarter of it at a time shouldn't be a factor. So I'm going to be mailing them or shipping them a sample of the salt for them to verify, and they can take a look and they can either confirm or deny. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter, honestly. What matters is the new barrel came back good, so I can do that and I can start doing my water changes. And just before the live stream started today, my big vat is full of water to the top, so I can add my salt today and start mixing it and do a water change tomorrow. And I'll probably do a 200-gallon water change on the tank to start getting in more potassium into the system, as well as nice levels of calcium and magnesium. Let me look at this ICP thing again. So the new batch of salt will have 425 calcium, it'll have 1487 magnesium, and 445 potassium. Oh yeah, I love it. That's gonna be good. So a few more water changes will happen, and I think the tank will start to heal up, and hopefully the corals that are still sticking around will improve. That's my hope. All right, I got more notes and more things to talk about, because I can't stop talking. Actually, this is the last thing, and then we go to your questions. Yay! We've been talking for more than an hour. So I just got this in today. This is a postcard from Macna 2022. This card will go in every order that goes out to remind people to go to Macna next year, which takes place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on September 9 through 11. So if you are thinking ahead that you want to go to a big educational reef conference, this is in a year, and you want to buy your ticket as fast as they release it. Like as soon as they say it's available, buy it then, because every month after that, the price goes up, up, up. It always has. I doubt they're going to change that. I think you get your best deal on the announcement day, which, I mean, technically it's been announced, so I don't know. I would look in, I'd go to macna.org or go to masna.org and then find the Macna button and just click it and go sign up. And you'll see what it costs. Also, like in, I don't know, a week or so, I think it's in a week, Macna is being virtual this year because of COVID, and you can sign up right now to attend September 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You'll do it from the comfort of your home. You can wear pajamas or nothing. It's whatever you want to do. And you can enjoy your own food, your own drinks, not spend any money on hotel, on flight, on luggage, on Uber, on nothing, right? No restaurant food, no high-priced liquor. You can do everything you want at home, comfortably, hopefully with AC, and enjoy the talks. And then in the evenings, they have these meetups where everyone's talking, and it's like a Zoom thing. And so if you want to hang out with a bunch of hobbyists, you can sign up now. It's $50, and that's for all 3 days, and that includes all the meetups also in the evening. So definitely do that, and I will put a link to that one too. See, I got so many links to put in this. I usually don't put any links at all in these descriptions because we talk about everything on camera. Link. All right, so that's it. Let's go to your questions and see if I can address your concerns or whatever it is that must be. I'm going to use my filter. All right. Okay, Luca, first question, great question, says, doesn't the water chemistry change during long shipping? It could. And according to Dr. Tim's article in that same Coral magazine, he actually liked the idea that you ship it overnight and you ship it on ice. That was his recommendation. But I don't know anyone that does that. And I didn't either. I packed my box, I filled it with packing peanuts, and I shipped it. I didn't care about temperature because I was dropping it off at FedEx at 6 o'clock. It goes into, you know, a truck that goes to a facility, which is probably crazy hot. Goes through a bunch of conveyor belts. But you know what? It was overnight shipping. It might have gone on an airplane, and the belly of the plane is usually cold, and they had it at 10:30 in the morning, so, or 10 a.m. So it shouldn't be a factor. But normally, they just say mail it. They don't say don't mail it certain times a year. But could there be some kind of degradation? I don't think the chemistry changes, but I think if there's some kind of bacteria in your water, literally like in the water column, and you scooped it up, there's a chance that you're something's growing inside that vial. But it is a sealed vial. It's not like there's more oxygen. And I think that's one of the reasons they don't check pH or alkalinity, because of it took a while to get that sample to them. Also, when it comes to taking the sample, you have this brand new pristine tube. And by the way, I didn't ask anyone yet, but I'm very curious if they rewash those tubes and then send them out again, or if they're just disposed of. It's plastic. And I was kind of hoping these are like being recycled through the hobbyists and just always being purified, sanitized, whatever. But when you put it in your tank, it's best to try and grab your water sample down here, not at the surface. And again, I'm quoting Dr. Tim's article. He was really concerned that people would put the vial here and the skin on the surface of the water, some people don't have good mixture, that oily stuff would go right into the vial, and they put the lid on and they'd send the skin of the tank in with the sample. And he was thinking that's a pollutant, and that's not good. So ideally, you want to grab a sample from the middle of your tank, pour it out, do it again, pour it out. I did it 4 times. The 4th scoop, I put the lid on it. And I left a little space because I just thought I don't want the tube to expand and leak. So I filled the vial this much. They probably used this much, but I sent them this much with about ½ an inch of empty space when I put the cap. I put the label on the vial, which I'm not sure if you're supposed to put on the vial or on the Ziploc bag, but I put it on the actual sample, put that in the Ziploc bag, sealed it up, and you can just put it in your box, and you can use their label, and you can ship it back. Or you can do what I did and pay overnight shipping and speed up the process and eliminate the risk you were mentioning. Skinner says, don't listen to some of these people. You're a real person dealing with real problems. and doing a great job with a great attitude. I wonder what their tanks look like. You know, I don't know what their tanks look like. That's the hard part about putting yourself on YouTube and into the general public, is that people see your tank and they see you, and they like to nitpick your flaws. You're too fat, you're too short, you're too bald, you're too gray, you're too dark, or whatever. I mean, they just, whatever. Personal attacks just come with the environment that it is today. It's unfortunate. And sometimes I just want to say, hey, why don't you stand in front of your tank for an hour and talk, and I'll try and find some flaw with you that I don't like, and I'll focus on that for a bit. But what's the point? What do I really want to burn an hour trying to look for a flaw? I don't care. Be positive. Focus on the topic. So, and I think I addressed this a little bit earlier, and probably that's when this comment was made, is that I am handling my tank exactly how I would handle it. I'm not actually coming to YouTube saying, hey guys, what do you think I should do next? And then reading 46 opinions, and then trying one and hoping it works, and then hoping tomorrow's opinion will give me another good one. I am fine with getting help from other people and having things pointed out that I should be made aware of, like potassium raises alkalinity. Never would have known that. Never read it, never heard it. So that one person said heads up, and it was exactly true. If I had known what was going to happen, now I do, I might have just turned off the calcium reactor before I dosed the potassium, just to not let the two things raise it together. So that's okay. At least I've told you guys now. So if you're watching this and you're dealing with potassium, you'll know maybe to not dose alkalinity, possibly not even dose calcium for a little bit. Now, I think I saw a follow-up comment that said, now that you've dosed the potassium, your calcium may drop. So I got to keep an eye on things. So, I mean, these are all, you know, those hints help. I do like that. I just don't like the personal attacks. I don't think anyone does. Reef P, I'm sorry, you had to put that with your question. I didn't see it. So to follow the comment with it doesn't work with this filter. Yay! Brad liked my joke. Okay, good. Yeah, no, I thought that was hilarious. You know, I go to buy bags of ice, and usually it just has like a polar bear on the front or something. But this one said emergency ice, and like it definitely is. I want all of this ice. Insane Reefer says, I have a chiller and I've only used it once in 8 years, but I have it for emergencies. So do you have it like sitting in a box in your fish room, and you'll hook it up during the event? Or do you have it plumbed in and water's flowing through it, but it's not plugged in? You know, because I did that. I talked to, you know, this is not a new topic for me. I have actually talked with multiple manufacturers of chillers and said, look, you know how we buy insurance to protect our house against a possible tornado strike or lightning strike or something like that? And like, yeah. I said, I kind of want a chiller that's under my tank that only comes on when I need it, like insurance. I said, will that work? And they overwhelmingly, almost every single chiller business, you know, brand I talked with said no. Apparently these machines are designed to run and turn on and off and on and off and cycle and be maintained and, you know, kept under good repair. So I couldn't use it like a safety net. So I'm very curious how you're doing it, because again, I don't want to spend $1,200, but it would have been nice to have one yesterday. I would really like, and something my friend did years ago. He had this really nice house over in North Dallas, somewhere, Plano or something, and we went to visit him, and he bought a chiller at Macna that was on display, and he knew the vendor was not going to take those chillers home with him. It was a huge, huge thing, about this wide. Oh, I'm sorry, about this wide. Okay, well, this wide, and it was about that long, and it was about this tall. I mean, it was like a really weird shaped suitcase, okay? And it was heavy, and it's sitting on their table. And he said to him, you're not taking that home when this show is over. Ain't no way you're taking that home or taking it back to the company. And the guy's like, oh, he goes, I'll buy it off you for a good price. And so he actually haggled him and got this chiller for, you know, I don't know. Maybe it was a $1,600 chiller that he got for $800. I don't know. But he drove there with his car, so he was throwing it in the trunk and bringing it home. So why was this chiller different from all the other chillers? Because this was a split system chiller. So the entire thing sits outside, and then you run tubing of some kind. I don't know if it's PVC or titanium or flexible. I don't know. but you run the tubing to a thing that has a coil in the house. I guess it's titanium, like Freon goes through. And that thing was near the tank. So the tank would be chilled, but the unit sat outside, and it could be, I mean, it's always inside your house, but it could be in sunlight, but I think it'd be better if it wasn't in full sunlight. So it could do its job and push the heat outside, and the sound is outside, so you don't have any of that in your home. And he used that to cool his tank. So if I were to go that route, if I really wanted to do this, if I wanted to invest a lot of money, I'd have to go to Macna, find that vendor, and haggle them down to half price to buy this, and then I'd get Bobby, my tank setter, to come here and help me hook the darn thing up. And he'd say, "Why do you need this?" I'm like, "I don't. It's for insurance." Oh my God. This is just an exercise in futility. I'm not doing it. Okay. Anton says, "Are you on Reef to Reef?" I am. I have an account on there, Milev's Reef, I believe, or just Milev. It might be Milev. And I don't post on there very much. I don't think about it. I go there occasionally as there's a need, like Randy's article was on Reef to Reef. And some of your build threads are on there. I go there, and if I don't log in, I get this pop-up box every 12 seconds saying, "Sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter." So it's like, really? And I'm like, God. So I finally just log in just so that I'll quit doing that. But I'm just trying to read the thread and move on with my life. I'm not going to rant. But yes, I am there. I do have a build thread on there, and I haven't posted anything to it in probably a year. But I used to share pictures of the reef on there, and I would insert videos I was releasing. Okay. Alex says that he recently bought the X1 pump for dosing kalkwasser. That's great. You may need to, from time to time, run some vinegar through the line, because I was running magnesium through one of these guys, and the tube turned completely white, or maybe it was AquaPower, it was one of the two, and the tube turned completely white and was actually dense, and it took me a while to clear it all out. So you might need to flush it once in a while just to kind of like make sure everything's nice and clean and not clogged up. And also, apparently, I don't have them, but apparently you can replace this tubing part and maybe even the head. I'll try to find out, because one customer recently said, "Hey, I want to get such and such pump, but I need the tubing, this and that." I was like, "I don't have any of that. This is what you get. It's in the box." And so he followed up and he said, "No, actually, you can get this extra stuff." So I may carry some of that since I sell the Comore pumps. So that way, if you end up needing accessories or replacement parts, I'll have them ready for you. But if you can't get them from me, you can definitely get them from CoralView, because they literally stock all these pumps. Awesome. So Insane Reefer said that he's about to start the Andre Mueller Reef Moonshiners program. And he says, the good thing about it is that you can still do water changes if you choose to do so. And I love doing water changes. Well, you're a weirdo. You know that? I just had to say that. Reef Peace says, "I'm struggling for 6 months already." You didn't say what you're struggling with, but I'm going to keep reading. Phosphate is 0.04 according to Hannah. Nitrate is 120. Salifert, yes, 120. I've reduced my feeding. 3 months using Nopox and still 120. I run the Clarisea. I'm assuming the Delta 600i is a skimmer. The aquarium's 110 gallons. Well, Reef P, I would recommend you do everything I just did except use good salt water, and you'll be okay. You didn't say how old your tank is, but it's 110 gallons. If you did a 55-gallon water change, you would cut your nitrate from 120 to 60. And then if you do another 55-gallon water change, you will go from 60 to 30. And then you do another 55-gallon water change, and you'll go from 30 to 15. You literally could handle this in a matter of 3 or 4 water changes. And then you want to find out if there's anything in your system. I mean, you could do it before, but really you're just trying to solve the nitrate problem. You want to identify what is growing nitrate in your system. Is it your ancient sand bed like mine? Is it you're running a wet-dry filter that's creating nitrate? Do you have bio wheels on some kind of hang-on back filter because the bio wheels make nitrate? Do you have bio floss biomesh, anything with bio in it typically is a thing that creates nitrate in our saltwater aquariums. And so usually protein skimmers, turf scrubbers, refugiums are the natural way to handle nitrate plus water changes. And small water changes won't touch it. It's got to be big 50% water changes, because 50% will cut the nitrate in half. And that's literally what I was doing over the last 2 months with my tank. And in theory, everything should have worked perfectly like it always has in the past. And I did not even doubt my salt for 1 minute. I never thought the salt was a problem. And so I couldn't understand why my tank was doing so badly for the last few weeks. And, you know, Dwayne even said, Mark, do you want to do another water change? I'm like, no. Why would I need to change more water? my nitrates, my phosphate, everything's where it needs to be. These corals are acting weird. I don't understand. And there was nothing like, oh, there's a bunch of screws in the bottom of your sump, or a battery in your refugium, or something weird that could happen. So doing the ICP test literally showed me the massive deficiencies in my system, in my frag system, in my salt mix, and then the brand new salt mix had everything perfect. So I'm like, okay, now I can make new salt water and I can start correcting this. And today I will mix salt water. And I think tomorrow I'll do the water change. I don't think I'll do the water change the same day, because I'm throwing in 90 pounds of salt in that thing, and I want to make sure it's completely mixed. Okay. So Insane Reefer says he actually puts his chiller away. So you're literally pulling it out like we do a generator. Wow. I kind of love that. If I could find a heck of a deal, I might do that. That would have been nice. Now, something else that I could have done. I couldn't do it yesterday, but I will be able to do in the future. My workshop, which is where Minion is, where I do all my acrylic work, it is through that door. Where I'm trying to see the camera. Through that door right there. That workshop was 73 degrees. My house was 85. I kept going out there for tools and stuff as we worked on the AC unit. And I kept feeling the 12-degree difference as I walked in my house, like, oh my God. And I played with the thought repeatedly to leave the door open and let all that cold air come into the fish room. But it wouldn't have stayed in the fish room. It would have gone into the 85-degree house and just been wasted. It wouldn't have done anything. So I didn't actually leave the door open. However, when I get around to doing all the woodwork on this tank, and I cover the front, and I cover the top, and I cover the end, I could close that door. I could literally open that door from the fish room, from the workshop into the fish room, and let it handle that extra, I don't know what that is, 120 more square feet, and it would probably be fine. It probably would have done everything. I wouldn't even needed the ice at all. But without the woodwork, you know, this little piece of cardboard up here ain't going to do it. The end is open. All the bottom is open. Cold air is always low, so it would just flow across the sump and out and into the living room, and it wouldn't have done anything good. I might have felt slightly more comfortable, but it wouldn't have helped a bit. But once that room is semi-sealed to maintain temperature within it, then I could have borrowed that air to get through a bad moment with the main AC being out for some weird reason. Paul says, I could send you a Salifert kit if you have trouble finding one. Well, I haven't looked yet, but I don't expect to have problems, but I will keep you in mind if there's a need. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Marcus says, I've been enjoying the Reef Diaries. I do hate the recent events. Boy, so do I. But we all know you'll come through it on top. I know how frustrating it is, though. It is really frustrating. It's super. You'd think I would have just grabbed a gun and shot the front panel and just said, we're done. It's just been so difficult to just look at it looking the way it does. And to do a diary and talk about anything in front of it seems the opposite of helpful. And I know a lot of people said, no, this is really helping us because it's letting us understand how you're handling it. But it's almost like, hey, you guys, you should do this, this, and this, and you'll have a great looking reef tank. And they're looking at my tank of death behind me like, what? So I'm saying that's where there's a weird dichotomy there, and I'm not really a fan of. I much prefer having a nice, healthy reef so I can say, see, what I'm saying answers that work. You know, I mean, it's how it should be. And this is a really weird time Now that I've established the problem and I'm making the corrections and doing the water changes with the good salt, I feel like in a matter of 2 weeks I can start planting corals, and I'll have some really nice diaries coming up which you guys can enjoy and benefit, some eye candy. I've had a couple people say, please film when you go shopping. Some of it's going to be shipped to me. I already know. Like Dwayne's going to get a big cooler and load me up with corals. I might get something from a coral farm, I think out of Florida. Possibly. That was an offer yesterday. That might happen. A couple of hobbyists have said they'd like to help me. One local guy said he'd like to help me. Frank has some stuff I'd like to get. So, I mean, there's some opportunities to get corals. So you may not do the actual mark as going to this store and this store and this store shopping environment with a lot of footage like that. It'll just be what it is. But it'll still be a nice diary, and you'll get an update. I actually enjoyed doing the cleanup crew video. That was really nice to have something positive to talk about. And it was fun adding the critters and seeing them crawl all over the place and do their thing. And you can see I still have a jar right here. And there's still a few snails in the bottom, like 3 or 4. But quite a few have gone out. And on the anemone cube, yeah, they've moved because they're snails. They move. But it was really funny. I happened to look at the tank today when I went to go get my cup of coffee. And I saw 3 snails in a row. And it was large, medium, small. It was like, I don't know. It was kind of funny to me that they were like that, like all lined up in the perfect size growth pattern. And, it's gone. But I enjoy seeing changes in my tank too. So that'll be a nice thing to watch them keep cleaning everything. And at some point after these water changes, I am positive I'll be using Live Rock Enhance in my tank to start cleaning my rock work up. So that way when I want to plant corals, I'm planting them on a nice clean rock and not on furry, ugly, icky, potassium, poor rock work. Man, guys, I really feel like everyone needs to jump on the potassium bandwagon. Okay, got to tell you another crazy thing about potassium that I didn't mention before from Just Incredible. He says if you're going to have corals, your bare minimum is 400. And I was like, no, 400 is the number. I mean, everything I've read says 400, don't go higher. And in one of his blogs, like I said, you're going to get the links, you can read them yourself. He said he has had some tanks where he's pushed it to 600 and 800 potassium. Like, holy crap, that is unbelievable. Now, I would love to see the tanks that had that high potassium, but I'm not doing that. I don't know what Andre's number is either, so whoever, Insane Reefer, if you want to tell me what he says, that's fine. I'm curious about that number, but I am definitely not going to not care about it like I have for all my life. All my life I've not cared about potassium except to eat bananas. And I love bananas, and my doctor said, stop eating them, they're full of sugar. And I was like, but they're full of potassium. And she's like, you don't need it. But my reef does. And we were joking. I was talking with MetroCat, and she said, you have to do a TikTok, and you have to like mash a banana, really, just the whole thing, and then start dosing it to your tank. And she goes, it's going to be hilarious. And I was like, no, getting a bunch of bananas, like the big long thing that hangs off the tree with like 90 bananas, and lowering that into my reef, now that would be hilarious. But I didn't do that either. It's a little insane. But I do care about potassium now, and I will be watching it. And a few people have said, Mark, with the amount of money you've invested and time and everything, to get an ICP of every single new barrel of salt you buy would be smart. They're not wrong. I might end up doing that. It's just kind of a bummer you have to. You shouldn't have to. And I did this already in the diary. I'm unhappy I got a bad barrel. I'm not unhappy at the company Seachem or the subsidiary Aquavitro, because I've had many barrels that were perfectly fine. But this barrel got me, and that sucks. So I just want all my future barrels to be good. And if I have to do a $30 test to verify it, I guess it's not a bad idea. I mean, I was already taking all my test kits out to verify a brand new, anything I open, a brand new box of salt or brand new barrel. I would measure alkalinity, calcium, nitrate, phosphate, magnesium, and salinity. I mean, I would just, and temperature. That's what I always tested. Never once cared about potassium. I asked Dwayne. He never cares about potassium. And, these different hobbyists aren't doing it, but others are. So I think I've been missing a little important little facet of information for whatever reason for way too long. But a lot of people aren't talking about it much. Maybe after what's happened to my tank, more people are going to be talking about potassium this year than ever in the history of talking about tanks in the past. But regardless, we'll see what happens. And I mean, I just feel like now that I've controlled my nitrate, my phosphate I've never worried about, never once. It is what it is. It's some number. It's whatever, 0.1, 0.25, 0.5, anywhere in that range, back down to 0.1, less than 0.1. I'm fine with any of that. I've never had a problem with my tanks. I don't have weird algae growing all over the rockwork or anything like that. So phosphate's never been an issue in my systems ever. But I'm thinking about what Justin wrote in another one of his blogs. He made the comment, when dosing potassium, you may start to get hair algae growth in your tank. So it could be that I will have to worry about phosphate more than I have in the past, because now with the correct balance of potassium, with the elevated phosphate and nitrate, there is an opportunity for algae to take hold. So it really comes down to good water quality from top to bottom, healthy cleanup crew, good flow, good light, and proper husbandry. And if you do all those things, you have a nice happy reef. Let's see. Insane Reefer says, yes, I am weird, but there's something about water changes that's so satisfying. You're not wrong. I've read this comment by many people. Usually I see it on Instagram, where they will say, I just did a water change and my corals just look fluffier, happier. I mean, they correlate the water change to happy corals. So I'm not going to discount that at all. I understand that. I could see how that would be satisfying. And cleaning your skimmer with citric acid is a great idea. I've used muriatic acid, I've used vinegar, I've used citric acid. Whatever is just handy, that's what I use. And I love cleaning my skimmer once a year to get it back to its original look. I just saw someone posted a post, I think in Club Mila's Reef yesterday, where he had just taken his skimmer completely apart. He cleaned it with vinegar and the magic eraser, and it looked brand new. Brad says, I'm sure from your perspective it is hard to understand, but your tank of death has become public history, which can be referenced in the future. That's true. I'm not deleting these videos. So Reef P, again, this is the tank with the really high nitrate. And he said it's 2 years old with no sand bed, so he doesn't have a sand bed to vacuum. Did a big cleanup 2 months ago, shook all the rocks out in a bucket. In the sump, there's only a Claricea skimmer and Siporax Brightwell NO3 brick. Did a 50% water change, and NO3 came back to 120. But what was it before the one, after the water change, what was the number? Okay, so Andre recommends the potassium be around 400. Paul Biggs is telling us all, this is actually funny, if you're not in Club Mila's Reef, you miss out on these wonderful opportunities. But he said, make sure you're testing your tank water and not your RODI. And he learned that the hard way this week. So he measured his tank and his alkalinity came out crazy low. And he's like, oh my God, what do I do? And by the time I got to the thread, he had already figured out what had caused it, because there was a lot of comments. Usually whenever anyone asks me a question, I ask them 5 questions back. I never can just answer your question. I need to know more information before I can give you an answer in most cases. And so in his case, of course I had my questions lined up, and I'm just reading the comments to see where we are in the situation, how many hours it's been since the initial post. And he told his kid, go get me a sample of water. And his kid came back, and he was sure the kid had grabbed the water out of the reef and brought it to him so he could do his testing. And he had brought him some water from the RODI vat. And so he's testing, and all the numbers are coming back really weird, and he's freaking out. And it was just the wrong water was being tested. That was really funny afterwards. But at the time, his hair was on fire, and he was freaking out. Matt says, do you think a continuous water change would have mitigated against the potassium problem or helped see it sooner without coral loss? I believe that I believe that what would happen was if I had continued done water changes, I would have kept seeing corals get worse and worse and worse. And I can tell you this too, you guys don't know everything. And I'm not saying that in a rude way. Let me explain what my statement. I am getting so many messages, PMs, direct messages, texts, phone calls from people saying, oh, I had something like that happen to me, and I did 5, 6, 7, 8 water changes, and my tank just kept rotting away, and I couldn't understand. And they also determined in their situation it ended up being a problem with their salt mix. So no salt mix is perfect. No one brand is immune to making an error. There is a chance with whatever you use someday, even if it was good for 20, people are like, oh, that's why I use Instant Ocean. It's like, I don't use Instant Ocean. I don't like it, okay? That's my personal preference. I used to have a roommate here in this house. He was actually taking care of my stuff and my business while I was in Europe for a couple of months. And he liked Instant Ocean. And he also wanted his own aquarium. So he got himself an aquarium. I came back from my trip, and he had an aquarium in his bedroom, and I had my own tank over in the living room here. And he would use all my equipment to take care of his tank. So he'd use my buckets, my nets, my sponges, my this, my that. But he didn't touch my salt. He used his own salt. But the problem was, when he was done, he never cleaned my stuff off properly. Doesn't it sound like a bad roommate or like someone that shares an office with you and they're using your stuff and they're not taking care of it properly? So he wouldn't rinse his stuff out. And I just assume it's clean because that's how I left it, right? It took me a few times going through this to realize what was going on. But he would use my buckets and he wouldn't rinse them out. He would just like put them aside and they'd still have Instant Ocean residue in them. And then when I was doing something in my tank and I would use the buckets that we're talking about and pour new water in the tank, I'd see these white dots coming down in the water and land on my corals. And yet back then it was soft corals, so it was like mushrooms and zinnia and leathers. And I was like, what are these white dots and where are they coming from? I've never seen white dots in my tank. And I couldn't understand it. And as I watched, the white dots would burn those corals. There'd be burn marks. There would be like little scars on my beautiful red mushrooms. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I realized it was undissolved Instant Ocean salt that when I'd make my own stuff, it was still in there in the residue, and it would sting these corals and burn them. And I was like, oh my God, you have to rinse out my gear. And I got all over his case, and he did. And I made sure even when I got my stuff out to use it on my own tank, I'd rinse it again and check everything because I have trust issues, right? But it was because it was burning my corals because it wasn't dissolving properly or he didn't dissolve it enough or whatever. I said, I'll never use Instant Ocean again. No way, not a chance, And so I haven't. And people was like, oh, this is why I use Instant Ocean because you never have a problem. No brand is perfect 100% of the time. I'm sorry. Machines make mistakes. Humans make mistakes. Things go wrong. And eventually something gets out there and some people are affected. And if it's never happened to you, I'm happy for you, but it doesn't mean it won't ever happen in the future. You may skate by and have a perfect life. Could happen. Or you may one day get bit like I did. It took me getting bit in 2021 after being in the hobby since 1997. I've never had a salt mix get me. This one got me, and it got me for an element I don't even test for. So, guess who's going to have to start testing for it? This guy. Reef P said, I did my big water change, the nitrate didn't change, it's still 120. So now I'm starting to wonder if your nitrate test kit is accurate, or if you're reading the kit correctly. I'm going to tell you to go out there and buy yourself an API test kit that measures to 200 and just see if you're getting a crazy red vial or if you're getting something more orange or even possibly leaning into yellow. I do know there's a right way to read the nitrate and there's a wrong way to read it, and I know that I always read it wrong. So you can go to Saliford's website, maybe they have a YouTube video. I know there's a rule of looking down from above, there's a rule of looking from the side, there's a rule of divide by 10. Maybe yours is 120 divided by 10 is actually 12. I don't know because I'm not there and I don't know how you're using your kit, and I barely know how to use their kit. So I'm going to tell you to use a kit I use all the time, API, and it's like a $10 kit and you'll know how your nitrates are doing. I do know that if you use HANA, it only goes to 75, so if you're above that, it's worthless to you. I know if you use ELOS, it only goes to 25, so it's totally useless to you unless your number actually is 12. So I would just say, let's start using other kits, have other hobbyists measure it, take some water to the fish store, have them measure it, and get some answers. If that doesn't work, start removing things from your system. You said it's just a skimmer and a Clarice and some Saporax. Maybe eliminate the Saporax and see if just a skimmer and the Clarice corrects the problem. But it could just be faulty tests. Could be user error of the test kit. I don't know. Lucas says, I have a chiller connected to my tank 24/7. Most people do. And it heats and cools the water. If the heater's not stopped heating, the chiller will start cooling. And yeah, I've seen those. Tico was one brand that had that, where they had the heaters built in. So it literally took care of all of it. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And kind of hot. Ah, get it? I amuse myself. All right, so that's kind of it for all the questions that were addressed to me. Oh, I did miss, I'm sorry. I see some super chats in here. I don't want to neglect those. Dan says, and thank you for the super chat. He said, thank you for the Facebook advice on my dumb anemone. I wanted to throw him into a box right now, and I can't find him. Yeah, so that little guy, he's been at war with another anemone, and he got a turkey baster and moved it to a spot where it could get some light, and it immediately crawled back under the rock again. It just doesn't feel safe. There's something, it's not happy, or it's chemically burned from the other anemone. I don't know. But I suggested getting a small box from Petco, and it's made of mesh. It's like $8. It's super flimsy, okay? I mean, you barely can put it together, and it's designed to just hang in your tank with a couple of clips. I used a magnet to hold it on, and it's supposed to hold fish fry for someone that's breeding freshwater fish, I guess, because they can just grab a whole net full of them, put them in there, and then feed them. But I said you could take the anemone and put it in there. It's near the surface. It's under the light. You can actually put some kind of food on it, whether it's pellet food or krill or mysis, just something to give it a little bit of food, and maybe it'll heal up and get a little better looking before he puts it back in the reef. But now he can't find it. The darn thing got away. And Brian Kurtz, thank you for your super chat. Oh my goodness, that's a big super chat. Thank you. He said, thanks for doing this every week and sharing. In the good times and the bad, we're here for you, and we appreciate what you do. Keep it up. Aww. That actually is really nice. I'm not going to cry. but that definitely moved me inside. That was really nice. And Nicolaj, I hope I said that correctly, also gave a super chat. I think, I don't know, Denmark maybe? I'm looking at the DKK, I don't know. He says, just want to show my appreciation for your content. So thank you very much for that. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Also, a lot of you became members of this channel, and I offered some perks initially, which are going to be satisfied. So don't worry if you are a member. Don't worry, when I can take pictures of something pretty, I'll definitely give you that. Because like one of the perks was like you would get something nice you could use as a screensaver for your computer or the back of your phone or whatever. But right now, there's just not a lot to take a photograph of that's worth looking at. So that's not happening. But I do appreciate those of you that chose to do a monetary monthly thing to support this channel, support the reef, support Spock's diet of bananas and nori. By the way, did you, if you're on my Instagram, did you see the stories where I asked, I said, ask me any question, and about 50 of you asked me a question that day, and I answered each one with some kind of an image in the background or a very short video. And in one of the questions, I don't remember what the topic was, but I used the background was a clip of Jack eating nori out of my hand. Who knew that a dog would like dried algae? And I had a piece, and she was like, well, I want to smell it. And I was like, all right. And so I kind of held it there. And she's smelling it, and she's like, oh, I want that. And I was like, yeah, right. And I thought, I'll let her take a bite. She'll say that's gross and walk away like she always does. And she was eating it and pulling out just like Spock does. And she was enjoying it. She was enjoying the heck out of it. And I was like, and she ate it all. And I said near the end of the video, if you listen, Spock is going to be really upset with me for doing this. So that was funny. Okay, that was it for the super chats. Finally, I want to emphasize, if you didn't get it from today's video, today is water test Saturday, it is time to test your water of everything. Some of you are testing already, some of you are putting it off, some of you don't want to do it. Well, take it from the guy who just lost a ton of corals. You should test your water. And you probably should test potassium. But we definitely want to know how everything's going with your tank water-wise, because maintaining proper to reef parameters keeps things alive. So water tests save lives. We definitely know that's true. It would actually be illogical to think anything otherwise. So taking the time to test your water, it takes, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and you have all the numbers in front of you, and you can make any tiny adjustments you need to have a nice healthy tank for another week. So I highly recommend you do that. I will be doing my water test today, and I will be mixing up salt water for a water change for tomorrow. Other than that, I want to encourage you to keep tuning in, and hopefully we will have some nicer videos to show here in the coming days and weeks as the tank starts to turn around and improve. Today I will be reaching in, maybe tonight, to remove some more dead skeletons because they're not going to come back to life. This is not a resurrection reef at all. We're just going to go ahead and clean things out a little bit more and let the cleanup crew get what's left. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the live stream, and I'll see you guys in a week. Bye.